hello. There's probably a little more civics and politics this last week on the channel than you're used to experiencing. There was a situation where an amendment was brought up before City Council on the Portland City budget that directly impacted entrepreneurs and entrepreneur support organizations, and that concerned me, so I voiced some of those concerns about that amendment, as did other people. Like any political situation, other people took an opposing position, and there was some really good conversation that happened around it. As it turned out, after all the negotiations, the amendment did not pass. But there's still, I'm really hopeful that this is the beginning of the conversation around how we as a community oversee and enable economic development, not only for entrepreneurs, but for existing companies, and what that means to the citizens of Portland and our community, and how we continue to work together, continue to talk and negotiate, and sometimes argue about how these things work. All in all, I remain hopeful it's the beginning of that conversation. And I want to thank all of our city councilors, our mayor, the staff for each one of those folks. They were literally working until the very last minutes of Wednesday evening to get the initial budget passed. And then, of course, because they were working up until midnight, I'm sure they were there until 1 or 2 a.m. cleaning stuff up. So thank you to all of you for all of your effort, for what you do for the city, and for helping to govern the city of Portland. Okay. Let's move on. Let's get back to startup-y stuff. What you come here for, and sometimes what you come here for is fundraising, and that happened to occur this week with Reperio Health, which announced that they had raised $14 million to help them expand nationally. Now, if you're not familiar with Reperio Health, they're a subscription service that provides health testing and those kind of things to people at their homes. This comes out of a concept that preceded Reperio Health, which was called Sightbox. Travis Rush, who's the founder of Reperio Health, founded Sightbox as a subscription service for contact lenses. That company exited to Johnson & Johnson very successfully. His former CTO at Sightbox, Matt Wallington, joined him to co-found Reperio Health, and they've been working on it and figuring things out, and they've finally got stuff dialed in. They've had some interesting partnerships with Uber. Finally got everything dialed in, figured out. They're at a point where with this influx of cash, they can now get national with the offering. So congratulations to Reperio Health on finding that product market fit and making it operational. And I'm hopeful that this influx, this infusion of cash will help you expand nationally as rapidly as you possibly can. So I talked about this week being a little emotional. If you're interested in tracking your emotional state, which would have been super interesting this week, there's a new app for that called Otio. I think it's Otio. And Otio is a very sparse, very Spartan.
This is Sparta!
Maybe app that is black and white, very simple, designed to help you track your emotional state over time. In the blog post, I got back to I always love when ideas come back. You know how there's Chewy, which is kind of the re-envisioning of pets.com, or there's Instacart, which is kind of what Home Grocer and Webvan were back in the day. Or there's DoorDash, which is very much akin to what Cosmo was trying to accomplish. Well, with Otio, it feels very much like an app called Mood Stats, which I used to know way back when in the kind of early Flash days of the web, started by Cuban Council. K10K was their blog back in the time, and they had this thing called Mood Stats that was a pixel art thing that allowed you to track your mood over time. I, of course, had to eventually give up on Mood Stats because I was just saying I was cranky and grumpy every day. It wasn't really providing the value, but Otio seems to be thinking through that. And then there was another Portland company, Emomi, Imumi. I linked it up. I'm spacing the name, but I'll link it up again. I don't even know if the project's still alive, but it was trying to do this emotional tracking to help you kind of pay attention to what was going on with your emotions. So I'm really happy to see Otio doing this. It's a very interesting app. You have to take a look at it if you have an iOS device, because it's just a interesting design concept to enable this kind of tracking. I'm curious to hear from you what you think of it, and if you do wind up having to use it, I hope you will share how your moods are going, because I would like to know. I will keep an eye on this. Again, this seems to be an app, like not a like full-on company, but like a side project kind of app, but still very interesting. And again, taking me back to my mood stats days from way, way back when, in the early days of the web. All right, it's hard for me to believe Portland Startup Week was just last week. Like literally last week, I was talking about go to the closing party and there's this stuff going on. So it was just last week. It seems like almost a month ago to me. And the week itself seems so long because there was so much crammed in to that week, over 80 events, like all kinds of stuff going on. There were parties, there were gatherings, there were events, there were panels, there were talks, there were speakers, all kinds of stuff, and a closing party. But on Friday and Saturday, our friends at AI Portland, it wasn't a hackathon, and they're not throwing a conference. So like they're doing things that are not things. The inaugural AI 0 to 1 Build Challenge, not a hackathon, was held on Friday and Saturday. It was designed to encourage people to build AI solutions or use AI to build solutions. I think they said when they started out, there were like 16 ideas that were pitching that then kind of coalesced into 9 teams that wound up building and organizing and working with AI and delivering product and all that kind of thing, and then pitching at the end. And the company that walked away with the win on the inaugural AI Portland Build Challenge was dBias. The URL for that is dbias.me. So letter D, BIAS.me. What does dBias do, you ask? Well, it shows you the bias of publications on the web. So you can take a URL, you can give it to dBias. dBias will read through it, analyze it, come back to you and say, hey, this piece is objective and factual and well-researched and all those kind of things. Or you can feed it one of Silicon Florist posts and it will say, this is such a biased piece. It's so biased towards startups and founders, and it's overly flowery and optimistic about the potential of these companies, which is just kind of how I roll with Silicon Florist. So if you're interested in using dBias to either check your own writing to figure out how biased it may be, like I've been doing with Silicon Florist, or maybe you want to use dBias to look at political or journalistic writing. Whatever the case, if you're looking to determine the potential bias of written content on the web, dbias.me is a great resource for that, and it all came out of this not a startup weekend, not a hackathon, an AI Portland 0 to 1 build challenge. So people are psyched, like it's feeling like that startup weekend energy where people are like, oh, we did this and it didn't take very long, we should do this again soon. So I'm already hearing that kind of chatter, so I'll keep you posted. It may be AI Portland, it may be other folks, but I would love to see more of this, just like not even like business building or potentially like product building, but just like this creative, curious pursuit around technology, gathering people together to try and build things or to test concepts or to come up with ideas or to hack something together. I always love those points in time where that kind of stuff is happening in Portland on the regular. It's a very, very magical time here. Thanks so much to Nicole and Megan at AI Portland for bringing this together and making it happen. Of course, the Metro Hub, which hosted, of course, Upstart Collective, which was helping organize all of Startup Week. All kinds of people were involved in bringing this to fruition, but maybe because this example exists, maybe it can serve as an inspiration to other folks, and we can have more of this activity happening on a regular basis. I'm inspired. I may need to start doing some things because I love the hackathons. I really miss the hackathons. I'm not even a hacker, and I miss the hackathon. Stay tuned. Hopefully some more of these will crop up. I will make sure you know about them so you can show up and build stuff and collaborate and all those kind of things. And if I come up with any creative ideas for a hackathon, you will be the first to know. Trust me. The other thing that happened at the end of Startup Week that, of course, I record on Thursday nights so that you can watch this on Friday when you're pretending to work and or listen to the podcast while you're pretending to work. But I often miss Demolicious, which occurs on Thursday. There was a special Portland Startup Week edition of Demolicious, and the company that walked away with the Demolicious belt was Soundchecked. There was a significant list of competitors this time, but Soundchecked walked away with the win, and they, of course, will go into next month trying to defend that title, defend that belt, and of course we'll be taking the stage at the end of the year with the Demolicious Champion of Champions competition, where every single winner for every single month takes the stage and competes against one another for the big belt prize of Demolicious Champion of Champions. So congratulations to Soundchecked. It's always nice to have regularly occurring events highlighted during Portland Startup Week. And of course, Demolicious has been happening on a regular basis every month. Really nice to see the community get to experience Demolicious during Portland Startup Week. And like the hackathon, I bet people are eager to go to the Demolicious in June. This is right, not to get too historical in this episode, but how I was talking about there are all these old solutions and then there are modern day solutions and all these kind of things, and these old solutions remind me of these modern solutions remind me of these old solutions, that kind of thing. Well, sometimes it's just the same old company solution that just that happens to come back, like Seaport Air. Yeah, like way back in the day when Oregon Venture Fund was still Oregon Angel Fund, or may have still just been forming as like an angel collective syndicate thing. There was a startup back in the day called Seaport. And the idea of Seaport was really air transportation between Seattle and Portland and a couple other places, but Seaport was obviously their primary function. And OAF wound up putting some money in, wound up being an investor. There are a bunch of stories about it. It was an exciting time where people were like, oh, venture investors just don't have to invest in like software or kind of tech startups. They can also invest in more traditional industries that have the potential for exponential growth. So I always think back to those times as like a really interesting time in the Portland startup community. And Seaport, as it turns out, is now back. Now we have, the train has some different timing now there's an earlier morning train that leaves Portland to get to Seattle, and then there's a later train that leaves Seattle to get back to Portland. But now you also have another option with Seaport coming back. So, if you need to get to Seattle quickly and you don't want to sit on I-5 and you don't want to risk the train and you don't want to have to deal with the whole airport and all the airporty things with the major airlines, Seaport may be a commuter option for you. In any case, whether you can afford it or not, I encourage you to keep an eye on Seaport because it's just always interesting when these new kind of transportation options become available. And you know me, I've always been a huge fan of collaborating with Seattle. I think we're very complementary, sometimes a little competitive, with the soccer and some of the other things. But, all in all, Seattle and Portland get along famously. So the more we can be collaborating with one another, the more options we have to get together with one another, the better off we'll both be. So I just wanted to highlight Seaport being back. I will link up the old article that I immediately think of anytime I hear the name Seaport, so you can get a little historical reference for Seaport and Oregon Venture Fund back in its formative stages. Okay, so we've had a lot of activity here recently with Portland Startup Week and the other things. So I'm a little I'm a little low on energy. This is a little short in terms of how long the episode is. You're welcome. I'm kind of saving you from me on this episode. But if you need more content, I am going to link up a KOIN news piece with Mitch Daugherty, the lead of the Office of Small Business for Portland. He had the opportunity to sit down with Ken Body at KOIN, have a discussion about the Office for Small Business and their upcoming launch of their website and their services and all that kind of thing. So if that's of interest to you, if you're running a small business or you're a fan of small business, please take the opportunity to listen to that KOIN piece and you'll get more details on the Portland Office of Small Business. And then finally, I wouldn't be true to my dumb jock roots if I didn't remind you it's Memorial Day. Memorial Day, of course, is the men's NCAA lacrosse championships every year. I played lacrosse in college. I was a goalie. So, so that gives you more insight into my psyche than you probably cared to have or need. But anyway, huge fan of the sport, always excited about this time of year when I get to watch some college lacrosse all weekend. So if you're interested in lacrosse, that's happening this weekend. It's like Cornell and Maryland and Syracuse and Penn State, I think, are the four who are left in the Div 1 championships. I think there's some Div 3 activity too. But anyway, if you have any interest, please enjoy lacrosse this weekend, and we'll see who walks away with the championship. But by all means, I hope you get a weekend. I hope you get some downtime. It's been a lot the last couple of weeks, so hang in there. And until we get the chance to chat again, please keep up the good work.